The play was in progress at the village theater when the curtain was suddenly lowered and the manager stepped before the audience and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, it distresses me deeply to have to announce that the leading actor, our beloved mayor, has just had a fatal heart attack in the dressing room. We are forced, therefore, to stop the play." A lady in the front row stood up and shouted, "Quick, give him chicken broth." "Madam," said the manager, "the heart attack was fatal. The man is dead." She screamed, well, then give it to him at once." "Madam," he pleaded, "what good will chicken broth do for a dead man?" She shouted, well, what harm will it do?" Chicken broth does for the dead what forgiveness does for the unaware and the unrepentant. Absolutely nothing. When we forgive someone who denies any wrongdoing, when we forgive someone who is not sorry, not remorseful, not repentant, we do it not for their benefit. We do it for our benefit. We do it for our healing. I mean, clearly, it does the offender no good when the offender is in denial. And this is true of God's forgiveness as well. When we refuse to acknowledge our transgressions against others, when we refuse to acknowledge the hurt, the offense, the suffering that we have caused others, the forgiveness of God will do us no good. Now, I made the point in my very first video on these lessons in forgiveness that repentance is the pathway that leads to homecoming. It leads to healing and renewal and restoration. In one sense, the forgiveness of God is unconditional. I mean, it's not earned. We do not have to do anything to be worthy of it. It's free. But if forgiveness is not experienced, that's on us, not God. God never closes the door or withdraws the invitation to experience homecoming. But we can refuse to come home. The door is always closed on our side. The forgiveness of God has already been granted, but the only way we can enter the forgiveness, experience the forgiveness, appropriate the forgiveness is through confession and contrition. And that's when, as Jeremiah imagines, God says, "I will turn their mourning into joy. I will comfort them and give them gladness for sorrow." Repentance is the way back. It is the path to healing and wholeness. This is why Jeremiah says, "With weeping they shall come." We come in the weeping of regret and remorse. We come with a desire to change, to be different. We come with a willingness to make amends, to make restitution if restitution is called for. Then comes consolation, then comes healing, then comes liberation and restoration. Then comes homecoming and celebration. And Jeremiah depicts in the text that we've been reflecting on in Jeremiah 31, the time of homecoming as a time of when women and men, young and old, sing and dance and rejoice together. When Antoine Fisher sees his mother for the first time, and he is able to express to his mother his feelings of disappointment and hurt, the suffering that she has caused him by not reclaiming him. But in expressing what he felt, expressing his hurt and disappointment, he does so in a way that leaves the door open. He does it in a forgiving way. And so he offers his mother a way back. He extends to his mother an invitation to come home. An invitation that she is not able to accept because she is so emotionally broken and sick. But the neat thing in the story of Antoine Fisher is that in finding his mother, even though his mother was unresponsive to his expressions of hurt and forgiveness, he discovers relatives. He discovers aunts and uncles and cousins he never knew he had, and they welcome him home. In a moving scene just before the final scene between Antoine and Dr. Davenport, Antoine is the guest of honor at a huge gathering of his newly discovered family, where all kinds of food is laid out on a banquet table. Now, before the feast begins, before anyone is allowed to have any food, he is brought before the matriarch of the family. And with all eyes on Antoine, this beloved elderly lady reaches up, hands shaking, she places her hands on Antoine's face. And with all eyes watching, she says, "Welcome." And then suddenly joy and laughter and tears erupt, and the welcome home party begins. With weeping they come, and with consolations God leads them home, says Jeremiah in Jeremiah 31. There was once a man who was not very smart. And each morning when he woke up, he had a difficult time finding his clothes. And so one night he decided to jot down the exact name and location of each item of clothing as he undressed. And the next morning he pulled out his pad, pants. Oh yeah, see, they're over there. Check. Shirt. Oh, it says, oh yes, there's my shirt. Check. Socks. Oh yeah, check. Shoes. Check. But then a horrible thought struck him. Where am I? He had forgotten to jot that down. And so he searched and he searched, but in vain. He could not find himself. The more we search, sisters and brothers, for our true selves, what Christians like to call the Christ self, the more elusive it becomes. We find our true self by losing our false self. We find our Christ self by letting go of our little ego. We find our larger self by letting go of our little self. And this is how forgiveness works as well. The more we seek forgiveness, the more elusive it is until we lose our bitterness, until we lose our resentment, until we lose our malice and our want and need and drivenness toward retaliation and vengeance. We have to let go of all these things that, Jeremiah calls hands that are too strong for us. We have to let go of all these negative emotions and attitudes and grievances toward others before we can find forgiveness, before we can find healing and wholeness. As Jesus said, we find life by losing it. For our own healing, we need to ask ourselves three things. First, who do I need to forgive for the hurt and the offense or suffering that they have caused me? Who do I need to forgive who has hurt me? Second, from whom do I need to seek forgiveness for the hurt that I have caused, for the offense that I have rendered? From whom do I need to ask to be forgiven? And then thirdly, what negative feelings, what negative grievances, what negative attitudes, what negative habitual ways of reacting that I'm hanging on to do I need to lose in order to forgive and find inner healing?